Alright, what's going on everybody and or anybody? I'm coming at you from behind the table today because I'm doing a different type of video. I've had requests in the past, probably the most frequent question I get from friends and family who are trying to get into fishing or just asking me questions about how they could be a little more successful, especially when inshore fishing, is how I do my rigging. So today I'm going to be going over my go-to rigs for how I set up for lures and then also how I set up for live and cut bait. I'm going to go over my rigs in depth, and if there's any questions that I don't touch on, please let me know down in the comments below. For live and cut bait, I use a Carolina rig, which if you're not familiar, you might have also heard it called a fish finder rig, which it's called that because if you're fishing a new spot and you're not sure where the fish might be, this is the rig to go to because no matter what kind of water, what kind of fishing you're doing, it catches fish. So I'm going to show you how I rig mine up in probably the most versatile way. Also, just so you guys know, the rod and reel I'm going to be using, so it's a 2500 series spinning reel and a 6'6" medium light rod. I always used medium rods up until about 6 months ago, and I started getting into medium light rods. They have enough backbone to handle most everything. I've caught 4-foot sharks on this rod and reel. I've caught 30+ inch redfish on this, giant 4-foot across stingrays. However, it also is sensitive enough to feel small bites, be able to fling small lures longer distances, and also make a day of smaller fish way more fun. This is a 6'6", like I said. I prefer to use a 7 or 7'6" even, so you can get a little extra distance. But when you do kayak fishing, which I do a lot of the time now, a little bit of a shorter rod can just make it less cumbersome. So a 6'6", maybe a 7-foot is kind of ideal for inshore kayak fishing, but anywhere from a 6'6" to a 7'6" is ideal for an inshore fishing rod. Anyway, let's get to the actual rigging here. Alright, so let's start with the Carolina rig or the fish finder rig. So basically, I like using as versatile a tackle as I can, so I'm kind of ready for most anything that inshore fishing, especially around the low country, is going to throw at me. So for my main line, I almost always use 20-pound braid. Braided line just allows you to get a lot more line on that reel, and it also helps a lot with sensitivity. It's not great with abrasion resistance, so if you're fishing around rocks and a ton of oysters, you might want to consider something like mono or something for a main line. However, for even inshore fishing around oysters, I'm fine with braid line. And then also you get way better casting distance because it's such a small diameter, it catches a lot less wind, so it goes a lot further. So for a leader line, I almost always use a 20-pound fluorocarbon line. Blue Label is just the line I have right now, but I've used all different types of fluorocarbon leader. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same material. You use whatever brand you want. But 20-pound is really versatile. It can handle a lot of toothy things. For most live bait and cut bait scenarios, I'm using a 1/2 ounce egg sinker. It's light, but it usually holds ground pretty well. I've used this in up to like 15 feet of water really effectively as long as the current's not crazy. And I like the egg sinkers when you're inshore fishing because it's way less likely to get caught on an oyster bed or something like that. If you're fishing in like a sandy area, if you're doing surf fishing, something along those lines, you'll probably want to consider using a pyramid sinker. They just hold bottom a lot better. But when you're fishing around rocky areas or oystery areas, egg sinkers are a lot less likely to get caught. So then I have a small barrel swivel, that bead, and this is a 1/0 circle hook. Let me go ahead and rig this up for you. So I usually use, again, I'm trying to make this as versatile as I can. I generally use about 12 inches of leader line. That gets me where I need to be most of the time. What's important to remember when you're fishing around oysters, especially inshore fishing, the longer your leader on your Carolina or bottom rig, the more likely you are to get caught up in those oysters. The current, it just gives it more distance for it to get caught. So if you want a 12-inch leader, you need to add like 4 or 5 extra inches on when you first start out because of the line that'll be lost when you're tying knots. So I love using just a clinch knot, cinch knot, whatever you want to call it. As Salt Strong videos and knot breaking tests have shown, 7 spins or 7 twists is usually the go-to when it comes to tying a fluorocarbon clinch knot. What's also important when you're tying a fluorocarbon clinch knot is to make sure that you wet the line a little bit because it helps prevent line burn when you clinch it down. Just like that. You got it nice and tight. That's not going anywhere. And what's so cool about circle hooks, if you don't already know this, is the design of them, they set the hook themselves. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but when you pull on it, the pressure of the fish pulling on that bait right into the hook point, and 9 times out of 10 it finds the corner of the mouth. So it really helps prevent gut hooking, and you don't have to set the hook, so you can throw your bait out, leave it in the rod holder, and not worry about it. Alright, and then on the other end here, go ahead and tie your barrel swivel, then pull. So now we have our actual leader section of the Carolina rig. Swivel on this end, hook on this end, and about 12 to 14 inches of leader it looks like. So this is a good length for me. Then what I'm going to do next is actually take my main line. So like I said, I use 20-pound braid for my main line. First you thread on that 1/2 ounce egg sinker. Get the line through it, sit that down. Then you put the bead. So the bead serves a couple of purposes. Really the reason I use it is to protect the knot because braid's fragile to abrasion, very susceptible to getting cut, and so the rough edges of the egg sinker over time can fray up your line, so you want to keep an eye on that if you keep the same Carolina rig on for a long time. But other people say, it helps make noise, the color of the bead matters, stuff like that. I haven't found that to be the case, and I can't say for sure, but to each their own. So then I'm going to attach the barrel swivel here with a clinch knot. When you're doing a clinch knot with braid line, because it's more slippery and has less traction and friction than a fluorocarbon or a mono, like a plastic leader line, I like to go through the opening of where you're tying it to twice and then do your clinch knot. The knot is less likely to come undone. Alright, and so once you get your 8 twists, because I like doing a little bit more with the braid, pull it through, clinch it down just like you normally would. Alright, so now we got everything securely attached. Alright, so the whole concept with using the Carolina rig is that this weight can slide up and down the line freely. So you have, imagine you're on the bottom here, and you've got your bait casted out in the current. It's flapping around in the current, whatever, and a fish comes and picks it up. Now this works with live and cut bait. It picks it up, it can start running with it, line will go straight through the weight so it doesn't feel any resistance. And then it eats it a little bit, and finally it tightens up the line all the way, and it sets the hook on itself. And with that circle hook, when pressure gets applied, that's when the hook sets on itself. You just have that bail flipped, so it starts going, and then it tightens the line, and it sets the hook on itself. It's as easy as that. So if you're using big chunks of bait or big live bait, you can scale up the hook, you can scale up the leader, you can do whatever you want, really. This is just how I like to fish it for inshore fishing, and it's been super effective. Anyway, let me go ahead and rig up the rod again. This time I'm going to show you how I like to rig it when I'm throwing lures. And we'll be using the same leader line, 20-pound fluorocarbon leader, and just tying a straight line-to-line connection using a double uni knot. So I like using line-to-line connections because when you use a swivel to connect your leader, it's one more thing that could potentially give away that you're using a lure and scare off that fish. So when you're picking a line-to-line connection, there's a lot of things that come into play. The most important factor I thought of when I was trying to decide what not to use for a line-to-line connection was what I could tie quickly and efficiently in a situation where I'm trying to switch my tactics and tying a lure very quickly. What I like to do is, like I said, I use a double uni knot. That's a knot I learned from Saltwater. I can link their video above on how to tie a double uni knot, because I'm not really going to go into that too much. They have a very good instructional that taught me how to tie it, so I think you'd probably be better served watching their video on that. When I'm tying braid to fluoro, I like to double up my braid. So here you can see I folded it over, and I'm using a second strand to tie the uni knot with the braid. And the reason I like doing that, the braid is a lot thinner profile, and it's harder for it's slipperier. And so it's the same concept of why you tie a second loop around the hook when you're doing a clinch knot with braid. It just helps it get a better grip and better traction so the knot doesn't come undone. So I like to do 5 wraps with the braid part of the double uni knot. I'm going to pull it down, wet it, then you come over here, and the only important thing to remember is to make sure you go around both strands of the braid with the fluoro. So that way it actually functions how it's supposed to and doesn't just fall apart on you. And then once you tighten it down as much as you can, you cinch it. You pull on all the ends to make sure you get every bit of slack out of there. And then you go ahead and you trim the edges on this. So this isn't the strongest or the most low profile line to line knot you can use. However, it's the easiest one I've found to tie. You could do an FG knot, that's the strongest and it has the smallest profile. But unless you're really good at it, it takes forever to tie. So I've pretty much stopped tying that altogether. And this is a knot that I can tie in 30 seconds when I'm out on the kayak and just get to throwing right away. Don't know how well you can see it, but that's the knot right there. This knot has landed some really big fish. Like there's been a couple of times I've landed a fish and I had to remind myself that I did a line-to-line connection. It's always pretty cool when something like literally tying 2 strings together holds up that well. So I start with about 4 feet, so that way I can go through 6 or so lure changes on the same leader and not have to think about retying a leader for a while, unless I break off or something like that. Alright everybody, well I hope that was helpful for you. That's really how I fish 90% of the time. If I'm throwing lures, I'm using that double uni knot to connect the 20-pound fluorocarbon leader to my main line. If I'm fishing live or cut bait, 90% of the time again, I'm using that Carolina rig just how I showed you. Smaller hook than you probably think that you need. As long as you keep that line tight, they'll get hooked at the right time and in the corner of the mouth most of the time. Small hook size, fluorocarbon leader, and using a good sized rod and reel to make it as fun as possible. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything I didn't touch on that you guys would like me to touch on more in a future video, I haven't really done many of these rigging videos in the past. Let me know down below if there's anything else I didn't explain enough or didn't just touch on in this video that you would like to hear from me in the future. Or if you just have any follow-up questions to the information I did provide, I can definitely let you know down below. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel. I have a lot of fun making these videos and it's cool to know that there's at least a couple of people out there that I've helped. But anyway, thank you so much and have a great day, guys.